James and Wilcox together with me, and he's the founder of B2B Linked LinkedIn Ads Agency in Utah, I believe. And he started his career in 2011, starting with LinkedIn Ads, and is now managing over 400 LinkedIn Ads accounts, a little bit of 130 million in ad spend, if I believe so. And AJ, just introduce yourself to the audience. Who are you? What do you do? And how did you stumble upon LinkedIn Ads?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, AJ Wilcox, about 7 years ago, well, I guess closer to 6, I was running LinkedIn's largest spending account worldwide. And after having that experience, I was getting ready to leave that company. And I went, I could just go and get a job somewhere else at some other company. But, I have skills on LinkedIn ads that no one has. And it's this channel that, hardly anyone's even heard of. It seems like it would have been a waste to go and work for another company, especially if LinkedIn ads wasn't like a really strong channel for them. And so I thought, okay, what's the most efficient way for me to share this knowledge with as many different companies as possible? It's an ad agency. So I absolutely hate ad agencies. I've always hated the model, but it was the most effective way to share knowledge and this expertise that I had garnered with as many people as possible. So I run an ad agency, and we're called B2 Linked. And obviously, LinkedIn ads is all we do. Yeah.
It kind of sits in the name, B2 Linked, LinkedIn ads kind of makes sense there. And for me to understand, like, I know we've been hit by Corona. We have like this major crisis going on. Like, what was like the impact on the agency side with the companies you're working with?
Yeah, we had about 40% of our clients pause within that 2-week period of panic, which was obviously very scary for us as an agency to have 40% of your clients pause. The nice thing is about 75% of them came back. The other 25% just quit. And so we had a really lean few months where we didn't have nearly as many clients, and we had just barely hired 2 new account managers right before the panic. So we've been floating them through, even though they're not able to manage as many accounts. And now it feels like we're on the other side because we're getting more leads. We have onboarded more new clients, in record numbers. So while we've had a pretty slim few months while everyone's in panic and not knowing what's happening, I think we're coming out the other side, and there seems to be a lot of hunger still for LinkedIn ads.
Yeah, makes sense. I think the same happened to us. A lot of people paused, they didn't, at certain times I would say they paused everything. And after a while, they're like, oh, actually, we need to go digital. We can't do anything offline. So what do we do basically? And I think LinkedIn ads is one of those options that you decide to go as a B2B company, I assume.
Yeah. When I was predicting, if we were thinking for a long time that we were going into a recession because the world is due for a recession. And so I was wondering, what are we going to do to become recession proof? And I was quite frankly very scared because when you are looking at a company, marketing funds are the easiest to cut. And when you're looking at your marketing funds, the most expensive ad channel is the easiest to cut. So I knew that if there was some kind of recession or a pullback, LinkedIn ads would probably have its budget cut first. And even if your spend on LinkedIn is doing really well, if you have an agency managing it, you're going to consider cutting them before you cut your spend. So I thought we were, I don't think we were hit nearly as hard as we could have been because it really seems obvious. Get rid of the agency that's managing the most expensive channel in our marketing spend.
So why do you think you managed to get above that basically? Why didn't they just cut you or anything? Like, is there something special you did? Is there something you just have a nice smile? What did you do?
Honestly, I think it's the performance. We are insanely good at managing large accounts at real scale and keeping performance really high and keeping costs as low as possible. That's really our specialty. And so with these clients who over time, we might have a more expensive cost per lead than they see on Facebook or Google, but they don't see this lead quality on any other channel. And so if they give LinkedIn ads enough time and they see what their cost per qualified lead, their cost per proposal, their cost per closed deal, LinkedIn starts to look really good. So if we've been with these clients long enough for them to actually see what's happening down the sales funnel, then I think they were sold on working with us. If they hadn't gotten there yet, I think they would have been quick to cut us.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're like comparing already like two channels, which is Facebook or anything else, and LinkedIn. I also, as mentioned before, I was a Facebook marketer walking into LinkedIn ads, and I'm like, what the hell is this? This is like a super simple version of the Ads Manager. And I just wanted to ask you, like, what is for you the main differences and actually the common pitfalls that you see between these two platforms?
Yeah, I mean, first off, there are so many similarities, and it's so easy for someone who's already running Facebook ads to say, "Oh, yeah, LinkedIn looks really similar. They're both audience targeting. I'll go and take exactly my same strategies here and port them over." And what we've found is they are so similar in so many ways, and yet they also have some really stark differences too. We noticed the similarities first, and then as we test things, we find the nuances where they're very different. So where they're similar, I mean, obviously LinkedIn is copying everything Facebook does just about 4 years later. So we got video ads, we got lookalikes, we got, chat bots, and we'll, carousel ads, lookalike modeling. All of these things are going to come about 4 years after Facebook already proves it out. But then you have things like the messaging has to be very different, because when people are on Facebook, they're there to be entertained. This is time for them to unwind and relax. And when they're on LinkedIn, they're usually on a mission. They have something in mind that they want to do. And so on Facebook, you can really get away with telling a long story, having a long ad, and walking them through, getting them to know, like, and trust your personality. On LinkedIn, they only give you a split second. So you have to front load your ads. You keep it short and simple, and front load all of your value and the pain points right to the very beginning, so you can catch their attention as they're moving on to something else.
They're also because it's just been like recent where we can retarget based on video views and in-mail opens. It's something that was in Facebook a long time ago, where you could build these long funnels, and LinkedIn is like straight to the point basically.
Exactly. And that was the first realization I had about Facebook versus LinkedIn. On Facebook, the costs are so low that I could afford to send people to a blog post and other ungated content, just things to warm them up, and then retarget them and sequence them to walk them through the funnel. But LinkedIn ads has always been too expensive for that. I can't pay, in North America, the average is $8 to $11 per click. I can't pay $8 to $11 per click to put someone on to a blog post and hope that retargeting picks them up and can make them efficient. So we kind of start at the middle of the funnel rather than the top, where I would start with Facebook.
Yeah, makes sense. And so if you look at, because Facebook and LinkedIn is pretty clear in that sense, I think I also struggle with coming from Facebook to LinkedIn. It's like, oh, this is the same, but actually it's not the same. And I also see a lot of search people coming into the play. So people starting with Google, Bing, or anything, search related or intent related, thinking they can run the same ads on LinkedIn as they do in search. So they have this beautiful content they had for their search ads, and they're like, okay, how can we further distribute it? And they're like, okay, LinkedIn ads, let's try that. What are for you like the main differences between these channels? So in terms of, approach, funnel, copy, content, anything like that?
I know this one very well because I was a search guy before I got into LinkedIn ads. And so I tried the same thing. One thing that search people do extremely well is account organization. So when I'm looking at a LinkedIn ads account that came from someone in search, I can tell, like, it's segmented by ad format and language and geography and targeting type. They know how to arrange an account, but the mindset is totally different. When someone is searching for you actively, whether it's Google ads, Bing ads, SEO, they have an intent. They are looking for you to solve a problem. And so most of the time, you don't have to dance around that problem. If they're saying CRM software in their search query, you can send them to a landing page that's like, get a demo of our CRM software. It's very straightforward. But on LinkedIn, we're showing ads to people by who they are, not by what it is they're looking for. And so if we show an ad to someone assuming that they're looking for something, chances are we're wrong 99% of the time. And if only 90, let's say if only 1% of the people are even going to consider clicking on your ad, you're probably going to get such a poor relevancy score, your ads just won't even show up. So very different mindset.
So the mindset is indeed the most different. I think the mindset also relates to how you write the copy, how you build your funnels. Is a very different mindset, which you have to take into account. So coming into like, okay, we've done Facebook, we know the difference between search. Getting into LinkedIn. So let's say, okay, I came from Facebook, came from search or whatever it is. And what I often see is that B2B companies, when they come in and they want to try LinkedIn ads, they say, let's experiment with the channel and see what happens. So we launch a few ads, run $1,000 inside it, decide it's nothing for them. So I just want to, for these companies, like from a strategic point of view, what do you believe what are like the key aspects a B2B company has to define in order to be successful in the channel? Thinking about like people, setup, type of content, minimum budget. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I use this acronym, and the acronym works for any kind of social advertising, but it's the 3 things that your social ads need. And I call it my ammo. It's actually on the board right behind me right here from a previous video, but it stands for your audience, your message, and your offer. So your audience is who it is you're targeting, and that's why we're willing to pay LinkedIn's crazy prices, is the access to the audience. So that's a given. Your message is the ad format you use, the image or video, the ad copy you use, but that's really easy to figure out when you know what your offer is. And your offer is really your call to action. What are you asking someone to do? And so what we find is if someone comes to LinkedIn and they either don't know their audience very well enough to target them specifically on LinkedIn, or their offer isn't something that people actually want, they'll throw a few $100s at it and go, channel doesn't work, or it's too expensive. And they'll quit before they see the quality of the leads that have come in or could come in. And, really, if you're paying $5 per lead on Facebook and 55 on LinkedIn, if you compare the two all the way down the funnel, you'll see that LinkedIn starts to look really inexpensive all the way down to like your sales qualified or your proposal stage. But you have to generate enough data to get some of those happening so that you can analyze. So my biggest warning, I think, to people is don't expect a sale, because we know that social ads have a longer sales cycle than search. But watch your metrics as deep as you can get them. If it's just you generate a few leads and watch how they turn into like a marketing qualified lead, maybe that's enough, but you've got to give it enough data to actually tell whether or not it's working.
Yeah. And picking up on the ammo, right, which is defined as, the audience, the message, and, the offer. In your experience, like what is like the hardest thing to get right if you look at these 3 things?
I think the offer is by far the hardest thing to get right. In search, you just give someone what it is they're asking for, and that's really straightforward and simple. But on LinkedIn, on social, really all social, you have to lure them in with something that they find interesting. So if this is a free checklist or a cheat sheet, a guide, a free webinar, a free in-person event, those are the kinds of things that as long as you can tell someone by engaging in this content, you will be able to do X, Y, and Z. You will learn A, B, and C. And if they actually find that valuable, it solves a pain point or satisfies a curiosity, then they'll be willing to give you their information in exchange for it. And so you could have 2 different guides, and one could have a 30% conversion rate and one could have a 6%. And they're both guides. Maybe they're both 6 pages long, but one they actually care about because it solves a problem, and the other they don't. So it's finding what is that right offer that my audience will engage with.
Yeah, makes sense. So picking up, so you have the ammo, offer is the hardest part. So if you look at, offers that you ran, is there like a few examples or like things that you're proud of that you've created that offer, which ran amazingly? Can you give like a few examples of like top of mind, which is like offers that work for you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, this is actually an interesting experiment. We've had 2 different clients at 2 different times employ the same strategy where they put a lot of time and effort into publishing this big report, and then they broke that report down into several different pieces of content. And so you might have this 75-page research report, and we broke it down into a 1-page checklist, a 7-page guide, and a 35-minute webinar. And what we found in both cases was the conversion rates, no matter what it was, what the content medium was, they all converted about the same. And what that told us is, people aren't walking around going, "Oh, I don't want to download that because that's a guide and that's, I want a white paper, or I want something else." They're downloading it or engaging with it because it's interesting to them and solves a pain point. So however you can communicate your best stuff, whatever format it takes, is totally okay. One thing that kind of punctuates this as an example, we had a client, this has been like 4 years ago, but we were using some ebooks that they had, and we had good creative. We were doing this rapid iterative testing with messaging, trying to figure out, what does this audience of HR people want? It was senior HR people at large companies. And we couldn't get our cost per ebook download under like $127. And after 3 months of this, even though we're testing our butts off, we couldn't get it lower than that. And I thought for sure this client's going to fire us. And then one day they sent us over a new asset and they said, "Hey, here's this new asset. It's called the Ultimate Guide to Onboarding." And I went, "Okay, no worries." We went and set it up the same way, same approach, same creative, same types of ad copy. And overnight, our conversion rate tripled, our click-through rate doubled, and we were seeing a cost per conversion under $27. And it's the same audience. The only difference was we actually had an offer that they cared about, and that made all the difference. We could have screwed up the ad. We could have misspelled things. We could have used a bad image. The asset would have still performed because it was really that good.
Yeah. So if you think about it, the offer is the most important one. And if you look at it, like, do you mostly co-create it with, because as from an agency, you have to work with probably the assets that are already there, or do you really have to walk in and say, "Hey, you know what, we really need to create X, Y, Z because for this channel, it needs to be totally different"? How do you work there?
Yeah, early on, we tried to help clients actually create the content, but every single time what we found is they know their customer better than we do, and they know their industry way better than we do. And we just, no matter what we did, it was never going to be as insightful as if their team did it. So we took a step back from content creation, but by this time we've seen hundreds or thousands of offers and landing pages, and it puts us in a really good position to coach them and give them instructions for, here's how to ideate your own content. Here's how we'd think about it. Here's how we would structure it. So we're not in actually creating and writing, but we can sure give them ideas and be a sounding board for them.
Yeah, makes sense. And do you have if you think about examples, what if I would ask you, like, what are like a few examples of, companies running great LinkedIn ads? What's your coming top of mind? And you can even include a few of your own clients if you want. But what are examples we can look from? Because we can see everybody's LinkedIn ads anyways. So what is it examples you can steal from?
This one's really hard for me because I don't see anyone who just nails it every single time they launch an ad. So if I tell you a company name and you go and look at their ads, you might see the ones that they published last week that are a test and go, "Oh, those are really good." And they might be the worst performers ever. So it's really hard. But one good example I've got, we have a client called Summit AR. I think it stands for Account Resolution. And the owner over there, he's got these really out of the box ideas for how to get people's attention. And when I very first saw them, I thought they were like, "Oh, this just isn't going to work." He has banners on his ads that say things like, "Bad debt is like meat, not like wine." And you have to read into that a little bit. You have to think about it. And this is one of my biggest rules about LinkedIn. People are busy. They're in a hurry. They're not going to sit there and think about your ad. You don't, you have to get to the point. You can't be cheeky and read into that bad debt gets worse as time goes on, like meat does, and not like wine where it gets better with time. So that would be and in this case, it actually worked really well. Those ads way outperformed anything else that we'd tried. So anyone who wants good examples, go check out Summit AR. They're not a huge spender, but what I want you to think is out of the box. Because if you just do things that look like everything else on LinkedIn using stock photos, they're just going to blend into the background. And LinkedIn's a very uptight network where everything kind of looks the same, and you need to stand out. And it makes it actually really easy to stand out when you know everyone's going to be boring, so you be a little bit fun.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, the fun part has to be there. The out of the box thing. I think it's very common to like a social channel because you need to steal basically attention, or grasp the attention and hold the attention. So speaking about like holding attention, I noticed that in your podcast, in the LinkedIn Ad Show, which is definitely a recommendation I would do for anybody listening. You talk about not using video ads and using static ads instead, which is mainly because of the difference in cost per click and conversion. Could you like elaborate a little bit on that and give us like an example when you would use video ads?
Yeah, and this is really good because I've changed my tune a little bit since the recording of that episode. Before that episode, or actually it's just been about 2 months ago, LinkedIn released engagement retargeting for video. And what that means is we can now do sequencing. It used to be that LinkedIn video ads were like, I pay 1 to 2 cents per 3-second view on Facebook. I'm going to pay 15 to 25 cents per 2-second view on LinkedIn. I mean, it is crazy expensive. And we're talking 10 times or more the cost. And there was no retargeting on it. If that traffic didn't make it to my website, I couldn't retarget with Facebook, LinkedIn, or Google. And so the only thing I had to go by was cost per click. And when I ran a static ad versus a video, because on video, you're paying by cost per view or cost per impression, but static, you can pay by cost per click, which is the cheaper way to bid 90% of the time. What we'd find is our cost per click, even with the exact same ad creative, just video versus static, would be about, $2 to $3 per click more for video. And my reasoning was, okay, is the video going to communicate enough know, like, and trust in a very quick time for it to be worth $2 to $3 more per click? Probably not. And so I counseled people, definitely test both side by side. If you can get their cost per click anywhere close, do it. But if video is going to be a lot more expensive, then don't run it. Now that we have engagement retargeting, though, we can create these sequences. We can create stories that people actually care about. And now, because we can track it better, and I think video is going to be really good, I'm just waiting for that viral video sensation. We have so many examples in business to consumer that are just amazing viral videos that started as ads. I want to see that for B2B.
So basically your recommendation would be like start to create viral videos which you can advertise with.
Yes, exactly. I'm working with a few video creation companies to try to find this. On the organic side of LinkedIn, there's this beautiful effect where anytime that someone likes, comments on, or shares your post, it then goes out to a portion of their connections, their followers. And so this is where you have things going viral organically, but no one likes or comments on an ad. It just happens so rarely. And so I'm waiting for someone to come out with a good piece of viral video content that makes people want to comment and share. And especially comments, that's the most powerful fuel that you can have on LinkedIn organically. I'm waiting for someone to come out with something that elicits comments so that you can pay for 1 view and get 4 more for free.
All right. So let me know if you have ever tested that. That would be an amazing, test as well. I think I just want to get your point on that because as a Facebook marketer walking in, I know that we never test longer funnels at first, because if you look at let's do some first video marketing and some remarketing down the line. And actually, if you look at the cost per lead, it is always higher than just going straight for the kill what everyone has for the offer. So in that sense, would you start first if you would recommend somebody walking in? Would you just recommend first going static, and then if you have some more room, going into more video and in-depth funnels?
Yes, my goal on LinkedIn, because the costs are so high, I always want to reduce and minimize my risk. And that risk is minimized by bidding by cost per click, bidding as low as possible, and then only bidding up when you need more traffic. And if you follow this and then you get that working, you can then start expanding into testing, okay, let's test video against this static, or let's test carousel static against this static, and just slowly test into things, because anything that you do on LinkedIn, it could be a huge success or a huge failure. And so I would much rather use what I would consider the tried and true methods first, build my baseline there, and then start incrementally adding on things. And as soon as I can tell that they're working, great, go all in. But I want a little bit of a test first.
Yeah. Okay. So people walking in, try the normal stuff, the static ads first, and then if that seems to work, let's build on top of that to build more trust, traffic to the same audience, basically.
Totally.
Talking about like audience itself, I think a very interesting thing I read on your blog was the overlapping audiences, right? Because in Facebook, I know that as Facebook marketers, we try to avoid overlapping audiences as much as possible because you're bidding against yourself. Is this not true on LinkedIn? So can you just build the same audiences, targeting the same, and you're not bidding against yourself?
Yeah, thank goodness you're not bidding against yourself. If you have two different campaigns that are targeting the same audience, you will never bid yourself up and make it more expensive for the other campaign, as long as you're within a single account. But what you are doing is stealing impressions. So we try to be somewhat careful with overlapping audiences, but we don't have the same overlapping audiences report like Facebook advertisers have, where it breaks down exactly what the overlap is. So what we really like to do, we've got this model. Most personas, we can target the same persona by job title or job function and seniority, or skills with seniority, or groups with seniority. So if we have a client with a decent enough budget, we're going to target the same persona 4 different ways. And we used to try to exclude, like if we were targeting with let's say skills, we'd try to exclude the job function and exclude the titles so that they didn't overlap. But the nuances to LinkedIn's targeting are really crazy. Like sometimes we would be excluding the combination of those 2 elements, which actually just makes someone better. I mean, if they've got the job title and the skill, we know that they're more qualified. So I eventually gave up on that and just said, okay, I'm going to target the same person 4 different ways. And if one's lead quality is higher, one's cost per lead is lower, one's volume is higher, these are all knobs that I can use to turn things up or down. And I don't necessarily care that there's a lot of overlap between these audiences, because what's going to make the difference between them is the part that is not overlapping. And that's going to tell me the personality of that targeting type. Okay,
interesting take on segmenting audiences basically. Do you on an ad set level really try to segment, based on job titles, job role, not just job titles, but job functions and skills, and do you try to divide them? Because I see a lot of people bulking it up. I try to rather split them, but what's your take on it?
Yeah, we try to keep them split as much as we can. With smaller budgets, it doesn't make sense to have a lot of different campaigns running at the same time, because each campaign has to be budgeted for at least $10 per day. And so if we have a client with let's say a $3,000 a month budget, we can't go and build 20 campaigns because they would immediately overspend their budget. And each one would only get like 1 or 2 clicks per day. It just doesn't work very well. But if we have a client with a large enough budget, we're going to try to segment as much as we can, all the way down to where our audience sizes are between 20,000 and 80,000. That's really where we found the sweet spot. And so some we have segmented by skill, by geography, by ad type, and by company size. And so that's 4 different breakdowns. I mean, we've got hundreds or thousands of campaigns running in an account, and we get incredible data from that. But you've got to have a pretty significantly large budget to be able to pay for all that data.
Yeah, makes sense. And let's imagine you walk in and they don't have a big budget, and you say basically this is the 5 type audiences we can go for. Which one do you like to prefer to test first?
I like. I'll probably test all 4 against each other, because we never know what the personality of each audience type is going to be. And so it's nice to get at least a little bit of a flavor for that early on. We know job title is probably going to cost $1 to $2 per click more than the other targeting types, because there's less inventory for job titles and more competition because people tend to use it. But it also leads to the highest lead quality. So if we're trying to show our clients lead quality, we probably want to make sure we're using job title, even if it's a higher cost per lead. And then job function with seniority is the cheapest. And so if we have something really general, like an operations manager or an IT director, we can do that with job function and seniority. And we know our cost per click is going to be, let's say, $1 or $2 lower, and we'll be able to get a lot of volume. So if their goal is volume, we have to use that. And skill is kind of like job title, but because each person can have 50 skills, but only 1 job title, it's more aspects of someone. So if we have a very niche type of skill, like for instance, digital marketing, if we try to target someone with a job title of Facebook ads manager, LinkedIn's not going to have that job title. There just aren't enough people with it that they cared. But I can hit Facebook ads as a skill and a seniority of manager, and I can get that person really nicely there and also get a lot of volume. So that's a long-winded answer for I would try to do as much as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. I think for me personally, I like the one, I think groups is the one I really like. I think for a simple reason that there is a certain intent to it. So there's an intent of you wanting to learn about something. And that for me is like a combination between, having that personality and, having that, intent to be interested in whatever you're trying to sell, basically. In case of us, our last one was a payroll manager. In that sense, like if they're joining payroll groups, they're probably interested in discovering things about payroll, basically. So I like that combination of like intent, and it's also not quite expensive. I think you can get some nice conversion cost per leads inside the groups as well.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite parts about LinkedIn compared to Facebook. Facebook, it has the best groups on the planet, but we just can't target them very well with ads. There are a few little hacks here and there, but this is everyone going to join groups based off of what they care the very most about. LinkedIn, people aren't using them as much, but I can target them through the ads manager. So I look at it and go, okay, well, if I'm going to target someone through a LinkedIn group, let's say they went to go join a group about Facebook advertising. I don't care what their job title is. Chances are they are passionate about that topic. And if I'm selling something that applies to Facebook ads managers, it's probably going to go well, even if volume's not going to be huge. So yeah, I love groups too.
Yeah. All right. Nice. Coming into managing the account, because that's for me is always the interesting part. I kind of have a feeling if you type in LinkedIn software, you'll get a lot of, LinkedIn outreach and, the spammy tools basically to do an outreach. But there's not a lot of software out there for LinkedIn ads management. So I know that you used Stoke Analytics, not Stoked. That's where I had a mistake there. Stoke Analytics. Can you deep dive a little bit into why you use this software and what other tools are you using for managing accounts or doing LinkedIn ads?
Yes. So back when I was running the largest LinkedIn ads account in the world for a company, the only software that was good enough to use at that point was called AdStage.io. And they have since been acquired by a company called TapClicks. But they had bulk editing software and they had conversion tracking before LinkedIn had it. They did it through Google Analytics, and they had scheduling, day parting. And so for those things, AdStage was really the only software that we used, even though it didn't do everything we wanted it to. Then as the ecosystem kind of matured, there have been more and more vendors who have an offering for LinkedIn ads. And there's some really cool ones. Shape.io, they're not just for LinkedIn. They're for every channel, but they help agencies manage their budgets. So we can watch a trend of how close a client's spend is to their budget. Are they over trajectory, under, and with predictive modeling. So that one's really good. Supermetrics.com, I'm sure everyone here knows that. They've got a really cool way to get your LinkedIn ads data into Google Data Studio for dashboards and into Google Sheets. We've actually also built our own tools. So if you go to linkedinadsbulk.com right now, we've got a whole suite of tools that were really modeled after Google Ads Editor and Bing Ads Editor, and kind of like the bulk uploads that you have with Facebook. Yeah, exactly. So we built that where we can bulk create ads, bulk create campaigns, bulk edit anything. We can do ad scheduling. So that's going to be coming out here in the next, I would say, few weeks. We'll have a freemium version where you can schedule any 3 campaigns and you can upload up to 10 ads per day in bulk. So people can try it out and then they can upgrade past there. And you did mention Stoke Analytics. So Sam Fono Imoana is a friend of mine, and he used to use LinkedIn's API to help give us some insights into what our accounts were doing. And he went on then to go and build actual reports that anyone can download. And so, or anyone can buy from him and install. And so he's got 3 reports. One is an ads audit where, depending on how you're targeting in a campaign, he can show you the percentage of your dollars that are going towards what you're actually targeting and the percentage that's going to audiences that you didn't explicitly target. So it's like, it's prime information to tell what you should add to it to make it stronger and what you can cut out. And he's also got really cool dashboards. You go into LinkedIn and it'll show you the top 10 companies or top 15 companies who are engaging with your ads. His report will show you the top 5,000 or 10,000 and what their impressions, click-through rate, spend, cost per lead is by company. And you can break it down by the exact ad that those people saw. And he does the same thing with, like, what job titles are we targeting and what are the job titles clicking on? So it's insights that you just can't get anywhere else. And we have these baked into all of our reports that we do for our clients, so that we can give them insights that they just can't get anywhere else.
Yeah, so it's actually proprietary data that you can get on LinkedIn, basically. And it's insane that they actually open it as an API, so people can do something in it, but they don't even have it themselves. Why do you believe that there's like a malfunction between, they know the data, but they're not showing the data? Why do you think that it's the case?
I think in some cases they wouldn't want to provide a report that lets you criticize their targeting. So I think that's one. But number 2, LinkedIn have had on their roadmap for quite some time something that I don't know what they're going to call it when it comes out, but it's like an ABM dashboard. And so they know that customers care about seeing what companies are engaging with their ads and how. And so they're trying actively to come out with this, to release it to every advertiser. But it just so happens that Stoke Analytics has it first. And you can go and get it now. You don't have to wait for a year until LinkedIn comes out with it.
So basically, you should go to stokeanalytics.com, no, stoke.com.
Yeah, I think it's stokeanalytics.com if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, to get your custom report for free, basically.
Yes. Yeah, he'll do a free ads audit for any campaign that you want. And when we are really good at using LinkedIn's targeting, so I thought for sure we'd be good. We're not using audience expansion on any campaign, anything like that. And we found that 40% of our spend from this one really tight job titles campaign was coming from job titles we didn't explicitly target. So it was good and bad. We found titles that we wanted to target that were performing really well, and then we found some that didn't make sense and we wanted to exclude later. So totally worthwhile to go and get that free audit.
Nice. And you're talking about audience expansion. I know you've been not such a big fan of audience expansion. I know that. So explain us the reasoning behind why you don't like it and when would you switch it off, basically.
Yeah, audience expansion on LinkedIn, it was the algorithm that powered their lookalike audiences. And what it is anytime that you're building an audience, there's just a checkbox that says enable audience expansion. And LinkedIn has auto-checked it in every case. So if you don't know what you're doing in Campaign Manager, you'll go down and start building an ad, and you'll miss that this checkbox is there. And what we found is if you're paying LinkedIn's already premium prices, if you're paying $8 to $11 a click and you have a small budget, audience expansion will make your ad be shown to people that you didn't explicitly say that you wanted to target. And I think it's really unfair. I think it's a waste of money for small budgets. If it's a lookalike, you can run a lookalike campaign next to your explicit targeting, and you can tell the difference. You can see, oh, click-through rate's higher here, cost per click is lower there, and you can compare and analyze. But when you've checked that checkbox, it doesn't ever give you anything that's like, here's your original audience's performance, and here's who we added on. It just muddies your data, which I'm not a fan of. So I say if you're paying LinkedIn's premium prices, be ultra explicit about who it is that you're targeting, and don't leave it up to chance. We've noticed sometimes where if someone says, we're running an ABM campaign where we're targeting just specific companies, but we're getting leads from companies that aren't on that list, inevitably we go and check and audience expansion's turned on, and it totally destroyed their ABM campaign. It defeated the whole purpose. So I actually don't ever recommend audience expansion. I think it should be unchecked 100% of the time. And I've let LinkedIn know this a lot of times, that I don't like that it's auto-checked. But I do use the lookalikes every so often, and it's really the same logic. It's just my ability to separate it so I can compare.
Yeah, makes sense. And so I know you don't like audience expansion then. What about like targeting on different websites? Because it gives you the ability, LinkedIn gives you the ability to, go on stronger websites, which they don't really say what kind of websites they are. Do you know which websites they are, and do you feel it's worth it, basically?
Yeah, unfortunately or fortunately, I know the sites that they're on, not all of them, but I'm good friends with the product manager who's over the LinkedIn Audience Network, and I'm under so many layers of NDAs that I can't share. But what I am excited to share, they just actually announced, when they announced engagement retargeting, they announced 3 of the sites or apps that that your ads will show up on if you use LinkedIn's Audience Network. And they mentioned the Flipboard app, so people who are consuming news on their iPads and phones. They mentioned Microsoft News and MSN Network, so 2 Microsoft properties, which makes sense. They're owned by Microsoft. But what I know is they have over 1,000 of these sites that are all handpicked. I mean, someone who makes way too much money to be going through a list of domains and checking their credibility. Exactly. He handpicked, or they handpicked every single one. And these are really good sites. They're not sites that you would be concerned with your brand showing up on. As an example, they rolled out an integration with, I can't remember who it was, but it's a company that all they do is try to track the trust association with your brand on different websites. And they gave you this ability to exclude sites that didn't meet that criteria. And when they turned it on, nothing changed. Like, you could exclude everything, you could include everything, and your audience sizes didn't change, your performance didn't change, because every site was already like great quality. And so there wasn't anything to filter out that you should worry about. Okay,
so basically we know on 3 websites you're actually going to be launched. You have no idea about the other ones. So if you don't want to know where your money is, uncheck it.
Yeah, well, and here's the reason I use this. If I have a client who has more budget than we can spend on their audience, a lot of times this happens with really niche audiences. Let's say they have $3,000 a month to spend, but they only have 2,000 people worldwide who fit their targeting criteria. I want to be in front of those people every chance I get. And so I'm going to turn on this audience network, which is also auto-checked by default, but I'm actually okay with this one. I want every opportunity to be in front of these specific LinkedIn users. What I lose though, when I turn that on, I lose the ability to know their mindset. If they're on LinkedIn, I know they're thinking about their job or their career. But if I catch them on Flipboard or MSN or any other news site or something, I've lost control of understanding what sort of mindset they're in. And I know my cost per click is going to go down because those clicks are cheaper. And I know I'm going to get more impressions, but I can't tell if my lead quality is going to change because their mindset shifted. So most of the time, I'm probably going to uncheck the box just so I have a unified mindset of my visitors while I'm testing things. But I know if I need more exposure, if I need to spend more money, if I just need to stay in front of that audience more, I can check the box and it'll be pleasant because I'll see my cost per click come down.
Yeah, makes sense. And it kind of interesting what you say about, I want to make sure that I have data about people which are in the same mindset, basically. Because that's, I think, a big mistake a lot of people make when, comparing channels and making sure that, we're comparing search with LinkedIn and you're like, well, we don't have the same thing. It's like, but they're in a very different stage in the mindset and it's not the same thing.
Yes, invariably, when companies are really founded off of search leads, we have to re-educate their sales team that when you get someone on the phone, you don't immediately try to get them to a demo. You have to buy the girl a drink first before you ask her to come home, as the metaphor goes. So you have to start a little bit softer with social, and you have to nurture and really take care of it like a relationship. It's a lot less transactional, but as you know, B2B deals are larger. They may take longer to close. You may have to be a more sophisticated marketer. You may have to be better with data and predictive analysis to work B2B. But when you see these checks coming in that are millions of dollars as opposed to hundreds for a purse or thousands for a car, you get really grateful that you've got those skills in B2B.
Yeah, makes sense. And talking about like sales and marketing, I love I don't want to open up the discussion because I know everybody has his opinion about like sales and marketing alignments. But like, is there any tips you would give to B2B marketers when they're starting out, running LinkedIn ads, because they won't see conversions straight away? They might see cost per lead, CTRs, CPMs. That's all the metrics that lead up to the revenue. But like, what are like tips you would say if somebody starts as running B2B LinkedIn ads? What tips would you give them before they start running them to align with sales and marketing?
Oh, I love the question, Ricardo. Some of the best time that you can spend as a marketer is as a sales enablement role. And the reason is, you could have the best ads, you could have the best offers, but if sales has no idea how to talk to the people, how to nurture those relationships, what mindset they're in, what they care about, then they're going to fail 100% of the time. Maybe not 100, but it's going to have a really high failure rate. So what you can do as a marketer, first of all, get to know your salespeople so that they trust you. It's really easy when you're in different departments to demonize the other person and just say, oh, sales doesn't work hard enough. They don't pick up the phone enough. And it's really easy for sales to say, oh, marketers, all they care about is driving traffic, but they're not getting us high enough lead quality. If you go and humanize yourself with them, you become friends, find out what they care about, and get their trust, they're going to work your leads harder. They're going to appreciate what you do, and they'll give you feedback. If you have this more immediate feedback loop where you're getting anecdotal evidence on your tests, you can pivot faster, you can move and test faster because you're not waiting for enough statistical significance to show up on a spreadsheet somewhere. We've also found that if we had, let's say, like a 50% conversion from lead to MQL, if we go and show the sales team, hey guys, here's what the ads look like, and here's the offer people are using. This is what our audiences look like. This is who we're targeting. They will put themselves in the mindset of the customer and talk to them better, and we can get those MQL rates up 20, 30, 40%. We've even seen our SQL rates double or triple in some cases. There are also some things you can do as a marketer that really help sales. Like if you go and interview your sales reps and say, hey, who are the companies that you would just die to work with? you can go and take those companies and create an ABM targeting list. And then they really appreciate it, because when they see a lead come in from a company that they told you, then they know that you're fighting for them as a marketer, and you'll really heal that relationship between sales and marketing that's so often fighting.
So that's a good point indeed. So basically interviewing dream clients that you want to target and make sure you build a campaign around that to build that initial trust, basically.
Yeah, I think that's a really quick tool that everyone can go and roll out right now.
Yeah, I kind of like also the first thing you said, where you basically said, hey, make sure that they understand the mindset of where these people are coming from, because they're used to maybe getting, you always start mostly with search. And if the search is, tasked out, you go into LinkedIn. So they're used to that, having the mindset of people like looking and having that intent, which is not the case on LinkedIn. I kind of felt the interesting part there where we really had to go and write something in Salesforce. So when we were passing down the lead, we really had to write down like a little story where these people are coming from, what the mindset was, what they downloaded, how they downloaded it. So we just got them into the mindset like, they're not trying to buy something right now. Make sure you just call them and say hi.
Yes.
So we basically had to use Zapier, just shoot that data into Salesforce, build a little story for the sales. They're like, yeah, I understand where they're coming from now.
Oh, Ricardo, that's brilliant. That is exactly what I want every marketer to do. Find a way of communicating to your sales reps so that they know how to treat your LinkedIn leads, because they will not be treated like a search lead.
Yeah, exactly. Well, before we end, I wanted to ask you a few questions. The first thing is about the API, which I'm going to store for the last one. It's more about the future of LinkedIn. But I want to know, we talked about one person, but I really want to know, two people that when it comes to LinkedIn ads, where do you look up to and where do you get your information from?
Yeah, as I'm sure you've gathered, there isn't that much data out there. There aren't that many people publishing about LinkedIn ads. And so it's really hard to get enough information to learn, which is why I'm working so hard to create as much content as I can. I have a course on LinkedIn Learning, and I have the podcast, and I'm writing a book. But I can't create content fast enough. Anyone who is doing active testing and publishing what they're finding and what works, I respect those people immensely. Lucas Bax, I think we talked about him in the pre-show. He's from a company called Amplifier Marketing in somewhere in Europe. I forgot. Was it Netherlands? Yeah. Okay. He's in Netherlands. I was consulting for him, and he said he wanted to run some video ads, and I told him, hey, video ads, probably not a good idea. Start with static. He ended up having video ads that outperformed his static by 3 times. And so he showed me basically what a video funnel can look like before we even had engagement retargeting. And I love that. There's also a woman by the name of Adrienne Goss from CCP Digital I think they're somewhere central United States. And I think it was her who told me that you can upload a contact list to LinkedIn without an email address, and it will still match at a high rate. And so that spurred me to go and do a whole bunch of testing around, okay, can I scrape audiences from LinkedIn and turn them into custom audiences and pay less for them because we're bringing our own data? And then we've already talked about Sam Fonoimoana. He's not really an ads manager per se, but with all of his work on the API, he really opened my eyes to the types of data we can get and the types of analysis that I can do. And that directly led me to, on Thanksgiving morning, I was pulling a bunch of stuff from the API and doing data analysis before anyone woke up. and I discovered that LinkedIn had arbitrarily raised their prices by 35% on a certain date. And I could have never found that. No one could have found that data unless you had it. So Sam's an inspiration in just understanding and analyzing data.
Makes sense. Nice. And if you look at these people, I guess they don't have blogs, or because I don't see a lot of content out there about LinkedIn ads. It's insane. There's nothing really good out there. I know there is a bunch of blogs talking about what the basics of LinkedIn and how to set up an ads manager, how to structure your account, which is already a nice thing already. But what are there any blogs you're following, or is there nothing out there?
There is one page that I follow more closely than anything else, And it's when LinkedIn rolls out a new product update, they update this site and it's called product updates. So I keep that in my browser and I go and check it just to see what's changed, because most of the time we're involved in betas and we've gotten a chance to play with these things, but sometimes they just roll them out and they never had a beta period. So I watch that really closely. There's also the Clicks Marketing, CLIX marketing.com blog. They cover all aspects of digital marketing. But whenever they write something about LinkedIn ads, it's usually pretty good. And there's also, man, I feel like a jerk for forgetting this. There's a man who's really active for a long time in the LinkedIn ads support group on LinkedIn. And whenever he writes on LinkedIn ads, it's worth paying attention to. But these things, they happen so rarely. It might be like once every 2 or 3 months, someone writes a good post. So it's harder to stay up to date.
Yeah, makes sense. Lovely. So these are the things that you need to follow in order to at least be updated, and of course your blog and podcast.
Yes.
Just talking about your book then, like what's like the angle you're using? Like what's the angle you want to talk about in the book?
What I want is, I have a very unified message for anyone running LinkedIn ads. And this is how to target properly, how basically not to get suckered by LinkedIn because they're always trying to make you pay more than you should pay. And so it's about how to run effective campaigns that you're not going to, at the end of next month, say, oh, that didn't work and shut the channel off. Yeah. So the podcast is really geared towards the same thing. My courses are geared towards the same thing. The book really is going to be, it's more of the same. It's just, if you would rather take a course, then you can go to LinkedIn Learning and take that. If you'd rather listen during your workout, you'll listen to the podcast. If you're a reader, you'll probably like LinkedIn Ads Demystified because it's going to have the same information.
Okay, nice. So when is it coming out? Like when should we expect it?
I feel really sheepish saying this, but it's been almost done. I have one more chapter to write and 40 pages left to edit. And it's been that way for about a year. I told myself I was going to launch the podcast, get that to where it was maintainable. But the podcast, and then I was going to move on to the book. But the podcast ended up taking so much more time and effort than I was expecting. And so I'm kind of stuck. I think realistically, the book's probably about 6 months out. But anyone who's hungry for that information, listen to the podcast, because we get to discuss a lot deeper and probably go a lot further than a book can.
Yeah, makes sense. I think, but I still remember writing my first book and, going through the thought process that for me, the hardest part was really the structure. So the content was pretty insane because you know about the content, but really structuring it in a way that it makes sense for people. I think that for me was hard. Is that the same thing for you?
Oh yeah. If I know a point, I mean, you can just, like we've talked about here, you just bring up a point and I'll have lots of things to say about it, lots of opinions. But coming up with the right structure to take someone from, I don't know anything about LinkedIn ads, to I'm proficient enough not to fail, that takes an order of logic that my brain, I mean, I'm not a developer. I don't think logically. I'm a lot more technically creative. And so, yeah, once I got the structure, then it was really easy to write. I feel the same way.
Yeah. Okay. So 6 months out, I'm kind of curious to see. In 6 months, I'll be writing you on LinkedIn. It's like, hey, where's the book?
Yeah. Anyone who wants, if you want to be on the list, just go to LinkedInadsdemystified.com and sign up on the mailing list there. That way you'll be the first one to know when I come out with the book.
Lovely. Well, then the last thing I really want to talk about is really like the future of LinkedIn, because I know you've been busy from the start, and I kind of want to get your take on like, where are we really going with LinkedIn? So the first question is really about the LinkedIn API and the more specifically the conversation ads, because we've been testing them a lot, and it kind of feels like if you go to Facebook, there is you can run a chatbot, but it's very limited, and that's why ManyChat came out, and they're like, okay, let's dominate that space and really think about, hey, okay, if you want to build a chatbot, you should do it in ManyChat. Do you feel, because in LinkedIn it's the same thing, it's very limited. Do you feel like because they're opening that API, there's a lot more companies that are going to build stuff on LinkedIn, improving that experience for customers?
Yeah, it's a really apt question. Right now, I don't know, and I don't think LinkedIn knows. I think they've seen what Facebook has done. They've seen what vendors like ManyChat and MobileMonkey have done with their own message ads flows. And I think they're watching closely to see, do enough people use conversation ads, and are advertisers asking for more powerful integrations and tools? And if it does, which I think it will, we found conversation ads to be like 30% more efficient on average than message ads were, and they're the same inventory. So this was a really good move. I think if people keep asking for it, they'll follow exactly the same path. They'll open it up to the ManyChats, the WeChats, the MobileMonkeys, and Drifts, and you'll be able to unify your message chat experience across all channels. But for right now, I don't think that's the plan. I think they're waiting to see how advertisers use it.
Yeah. All right. So basically, it's still closed. We don't really know what's happening with it. Is there any, like, if you would see the future LinkedIn, what is like one thing that is definitely there?
Oh, LinkedIn has a wealth of information about people that you just can't get anywhere else. For instance, LinkedIn knows that you're searching for a job when you have filled out a job application anywhere on their site, or if you've viewed 3 or more job posts. And they know that you're a business traveler because you log into LinkedIn from different IP addresses in different countries all the time, and it looks like plane travel. So lots of different pieces they know about you that aren't just playing catch up to Facebook. These are unique to LinkedIn data. And I think what they can really do, they've been releasing this, they call them traits. So you can go in and see traits right now. I think you can get job seeker. I think you can get a few others.
Frequent travelers.
Yes. You can get like thought leaders or people like that. They even have preference for what type of mobile device you use. So they're starting to release some of these. I think there's only 5 or 6 out right now. But if you go to your LinkedIn rep and you ask for a list of the custom segments, they've got 90 or 120 different segments that they can use. We've been using these for probably 4 or 5 years at this point, maybe even longer. And they're just now starting to come out. So I think if LinkedIn can really leverage the data it has and not just be playing little brother to Facebook's ad tech, they can innovate on their own and bring things to the board that no one else has. I think that's going to be really cool. They need to do it.
All right. So that's the future of LinkedIn ads marketing. Looking forward to, keeping up to date about LinkedIn ads. I'm definitely going to follow the blog. Thank you very much for joining the show, and I'm looking forward to following you on LinkedIn.
Ricardo, thanks so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Cheers.